Last week there wasn't an episode of Friendship is Magic.
Aww.
But there was one thing that did come out last week that we bronies can enjoy. No, I said enjoy. That's it. Bob's Burgers, a cartoon on Fox, recently did an episode that was a parody of the brony fandom. Now, before we go any further, I feel like it's necessary for me to establish something. I like Bob's Burgers. It's a funny show filled with great characters voiced by a bunch of famous voice actors and comedians that I like, and unlike some other Fox cartoons who will not be mentioned here, it's not trying to push an agenda of any kind. It's just a good show that makes me laugh and enjoy the characters on screen. However, when I heard that they were doing a brony episode, I was actually a bit apprehensive. Nerdy subcultures are very rarely portrayed in a respectful manner in modern media. I'm constantly reminded of the fact that despite being around for nearly 50 years now, Trekkies are still stereotyped as being a bunch of basement-dwelling D&D playing eternally virginal neckbeards. And this is despite the fact that Captain Kirk is now being played by the bro-tastic Chris Pine. So naturally, I was worried that bronies would get the same treatment, but I'm starting to realize that fear might be unfounded, since believe it or not, most of the stuff that parodies bronies is actually fairly respectful. Let's take a look at some of them real quick. The first big brony parody came from Teen Titans Go. In the very first episode of the series, nay, in the very first image the show gives us, Raven is portrayed as a fan of a show called Pretty Pretty Pegasus, and she sends the other Titans on a dangerous quest so that she can watch her show in peace. Later on, she starts playing with little Pegasus dolls and even dresses up Starfire's pet moth Silky in a princess costume. And at the end of the episode, Robin casually asks if anyone wants to watch Pretty Pretty Pegasus. Now, perhaps unironically, the two Titans who end up being bronies have ties to MLP. Everyone knows Raven's connection. She's voiced by Tara Strong, who voices Twilight. But Robin, who's voiced by Scott Menville, voiced Danny, one of the humans from G1, which I believe would make him the original brony. But since they both have connections to the Pony franchise, especially Tara Strong, one could simply chalk this one up to the writers wanting to make a meta joke. Then there's all the shorts that Cartoon Network's Mad TV has made about the show and the fandom. There are at least 5 shorts that I could find that involve the characters in some meaningful way. The best of the bunch to me is The Adjustment Bureau, a parody of the movie The Adjustment Bureau. In it, Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh is being all sad and depressed and stuff, standard procedure for Eeyore, when Twilight Sparkle flies into him. Tara Strong reprises her role in this short, and in fact voices Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash in other shorts. However, a group of donkeys from other popular works confront Eeyore, saying that he was never supposed to meet Twilight, and Eeyore has to escape the other donkeys in order to be happy with Twilight, in a manner similar to what happened in the Matt Damon movie. There's another one that's a parody of the movie War Horse entitled My Little War Horse, which is decent but a little heavy-handed with the fourth wall breaks. I know it's Pinkie who's the titular horse, so I can sorta understand, but it just feels a bit off. And then there's another one that parodies both Cowboys vs. Aliens and Ben 10 called Cowboys vs. Alien Force, which is just kinda all over the place. The other two, My Little Pony and Rainbow Dash and Bernstein, are just dumb. The former is just ponies beating up kids, and the latter involves a Build-A-Pony Dashie coming to life and showing a kid how to be a brony, which just feels like it's trying too hard. But hey, such is the case with sketch comedy shows like this. They aren't all going to be gems, and at least most of them aren't disrespectful. Except maybe Rainbow Dash and Bernstein. That one was bad, and the people who made it should feel bad. Hot in Cleveland also did a brony thing. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know that much about this show going into it, besides the fact that it has America's favorite nonagenarian, Betty White. In the episode Cleveland Fantasy Con, Joy finds out that her new boyfriend, Sean, a big, strong, good-looking firefighter, is in fact a giant nerd. I will say that it's fairly impressive that the guy who's involved in 2 nerdy subcultures doesn't look like a total dweeb, so props to the show there. I assume this is because Joy is totally shallow and wouldn't give him the time of day otherwise. In fact, she ends up breaking up with him by the end of the episode, citing the fact that he goes to the convention in a horse costume as the deal breaker, but hey, progress is progress. And he ends up getting another girl, played by Heather Locklear, at the end of the episode, who's cool with it, so everyone gets a happy ending. The episode itself is alright, but kind of a mess, since the episode has 4 different storylines going on at the same time. Some of it feels like a bunch of filler, and other parts end up feeling rushed as a result. Okay then, so now that we've gotten through the history of brony parodies, let's get to the part you wanted to see. Is the Bob's Burgers brony episode any good? Let's find out. Oh, BT dubs, spoilers ahead. Jump to this point in the video to get to my overall opinion of the episode. The episode begins with 4 ponies enjoying a bit of grass in front of their stable when, holy shit, giant wizard head in the clouds! This wizard guy, Xandar, proclaims that he will bring 1,000 years of darkness across the land, and don't ask me why, but his plan sounds weirdly similar to Aoi Zodal's plan from Daring Don't. I don't know. Anyway, the ponies go into their stables and put on battle armor to become the Equestranauts. But before we get to see the exciting showdown between the Equestranauts and Xandar, we cut away to the Belcher kids on the couch. Aw. Of the three Belcher kids, Tina, the elder daughter, is the big fan of the show, while the other two, Jean and Louise, are kinda lukewarm about the whole thing. I should point out that this episode is written by Dan Mintz, who is the voice of Tina. Makes you wonder if Mr. Mintz is a brony, or if he's got a kid who's a brony, or something like that. Tina is a huge fan of the show, going so far as to have actual conversations with her toy Equestranaut, Chariot. Apparently there's a big Equestranaut convention that Tina and Chariot are super excited for, and despite the fact that they don't care about the show, Jean and Louise tag along. Not sure why. I guess going to this convention that they know nothing about is more exciting than working at the family restaurant. But when they get to the convention, it's full of middle-aged dudes! Oh, awkward! I should point out that if the brony census is anything to go by, your typical brony is between the ages of 15 to 23, while these guys who are called, and no, I am not making this up, Equesticles, are all middle-aged. But fuck it, says I. We're playing by this show's rules, not our show's rules. By the way, when I first heard the term Equesticles, I was equal parts, that is fucked up! And that was actually kind of good. Now I'm exclusively in the that was actually kind of good department. So Tina goes exploring the convention, and despite feeling totally out of place, she does eventually befriend a couple of the fans after they start talking about her Chariot toy. They start talking about the show in a nerdy, looking way too deep into this fashion that I could definitely appreciate. One of the members of the group, who calls himself Bronconius, seems to be fixated on the Chariot toy and offers to give her a brand new Chariot doll in exchange for hers, which she's had for years. After some hesitation, she finally gives in and accepts the trade, and the other Equesticles promptly leave. Bronconius proclaims that the Chariot toy he now has is extremely rare and that he just swindled Tina out of it. Luckily, Louise overhears this and informs the family. Later at the restaurant, Bob decides that he's going to get Tina's toy back, but Louise tells him that since he tricked Tina, it wouldn't be as easy as just asking him to give it back. They decide that the best course of action is for Bob to go on an Equestranaut binge, learning everything about the show that he possibly can so that he can infiltrate the convention, befriend Bronconius, and retrieve the toy. Is there an easier way to do this? Probably. But to paraphrase Crypto from Destroy All Humans, this way's more fun. And after at least one night of Equestranaut cramming, maybe more, this convention is a week-long thing, he dons his horse costume and is ready to go. So after an interesting conversation between Bob and Tina about the double standard of men and women watching a show primarily for women, seriously, they have the conversation, Bob runs into Bronconius and his clique. After throwing some sass at Bronconius, which he seems to like, he gains their trust and they enjoy the con together, getting their faces painted, getting Bob a personalized bumper sticker, enjoying some horse convention grub, and just having a grand old time. Bob gets invited to a dance party later on, which looks slightly less awkward than the dance parties that usually happen at MLP conventions. Unfortunately, things aren't as happy at the house, as Tina finds out that Bob accidentally read one of her fan fictions when he was studying the show, so if he brings up the information in it, his cover will get blown. Making things worse is the fact that Bob doesn't have his phone on him, so she can't warn him about the fanfiction. Throw in the fact that Bob got blitzed on some club drugs and got dragged to another party, and things are looking pretty bleak. Bronconius starts talking to Bob in a really creepy manner, talking about how the other Equesticles are weak and that he doesn't fear death. Seriously, how much of those club drugs did he have? He finally shows Bob the rarest of the Equestranaut dolls, which includes Tina's Chariot doll, which he promptly starts making out with. Sad part is, I know people like this. Fucking Equesticles. Bronconius says that by merging mouths with the doll, he can gain eternal youth that the actual ponies possess. Unfortunately, Bob brings up the zombie horse from Tina's fanfic, and Bronconius knows that Bob isn't a real Equesticle. Bronconius makes Bob get a tattoo, one that is, let's call it mean-spirited. Luckily, Tina and the rest of the family finally show up, and Tina tells the other Equesticles that Bronconius has tainted the original intention of the show, and reminds them that the show is not about judging others, and that the Equestranauts would never harm another pony. This gets the other Equesticles on her side, and they gang up on Bronconius. Unfortunately, they still can't get to the safe that Chariot is in, and Bronconius says that the combination is a reference to the show that is so obscure that only the most knowledgeable fan of the show would know it. But Bob just calls the front desk and gets him to unlock it. I was expecting Tina to know the combination, but that works too. So the episode ends with Tina packing Chariot up. What? Yeah, Tina's getting too old to be playing with dolls. She's grateful that Bob got it back for her, but she's just not feeling it anymore. Bob, as you might expect, doesn't take this well, and makes her play with the doll as the episode ends. And during the credits, various characters from the show sing the Equestranauts theme song, which I want to hear at DerpyCon this year. So, the Equestranauts. Gotta admit, it was pretty good. Sure, I could sit here and complain that the Equesticles were too old, or that the plan was ridiculous, or that Bronconius' character was a douche, but you know what? I'm cool with it. Our fandom isn't perfect. There are nut jobs among us, and if this episode would have made all the Equesticles perfect little angels, it would have felt a bit like pro-brony propaganda. But the episode represented us in a pretty good way. Most bronies are accepting and non-judgmental, most of the time, and all around great people, kind of like what the other members of Bronconius' clique were. But unfortunately, there are bronies like Bronconius who obsess over the show to an unhealthy degree. But after watching this episode, it's pretty clear that Dan Mintz certainly did his homework going into this episode, with references to fan fictions, pony tattoos, ridiculously expensive handmade stuff at conventions. Heck, even the analysis community gets a mention. Overall, I'd say it's a well-made episode and something you should definitely check out. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can find the episode. So with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later.